Hey, it's Gordon. Welcome to the bench. Today it's a Justice Trout shoe buckle block plane. It's a little bitty dude. It's super cool and it's old and it's missing the front knob, so that's why it's here. We're going to put a front knob on this. I've consulted with some experts, done a little research. I've got some dimensions. We've got some photo references that we can use to mimic. And then also, we're going to use Apple for this. And last but not least, we're going to distress it so that it looks old, so it looks like it was really part of the original plane. And if you'll stick around, I'll show you how I do it. As we get started, we're going to head to the scrap box and see what we have for materials. Now, it's not uncommon for me to make little gauges and kind of things along the way. So this is our shoe buckle plane. This is the 110. Not an expert on this, but I believe it's a type 2. And he's missing the front knob, so that's our goal. But we know how that fits. I've turned my little block. This is a piece of beach, and it's labeled Trout's 110. And it fits right in there. It's got a little bit of friction. You just give it a twist, and it stays really nice. That's our goal. So, knowing that we have an objective, I've turned a little sample, and this is just, again, trial, making sure we're getting the right fit and the right height, proportions. And this one's a little bit short, so we're good in our sample, but we need to get started with our project. So we need apple, and in the box, I did have a piece of apple. It had a split in it. So we got Clara walnut, we got lignum, we have cocobolo and other fun stuff. Honduran mahogany, East Indian rosewood. And there's the apple. I can see it because it still has the bark on it. Beautiful piece of apple, and it looks like the diameter is going to suit us just fine. So this is what we're looking for. So we'll go ahead and turn a couple of these little apple pieces, and we'll put this Trout's plane back in service. And then also, just for fun, I have a piece of maple, and this is from Boston area, and it's dated and authenticated at 1870. So this is a piece of a piano, and if you look at the grain on this thing, it is just incredibly tight. Gorgeous piece of material, and I save things like this just for projects like this. So I think just for fun, to kind of put us into the same time frame, we're going to go ahead and turn a little maple vintage old growth knob for our Trout's plane as well. So that's where we're headed. Let's go to the lathe. Well, we've reached the part of the project which sometimes can be the most difficult, because we're going to beat these things up a little bit or add some history to them. And although they vary slightly because they're handmade, I do use dimensions that are provided by collectors or experts that I know have some highly sought after specimens. They have beautiful condition planes that might be considered or would clearly be considered authentic. And the components are age appropriate and they have all the right characteristics. So we measure those, and I get a few dimensions, and then go from there. Part of making this fit is having the actual plane and making sure that it fits. So what these are, they're friction fit. They fit in there nice, but I leave just about the last 1/16 of an inch, right, a little bit more, as friction, where I can tap that in with the mallet and it stays. Same with this guy, he's in there. The overall diameter is coming from, again, a good friend. The height is supposed to be roughly 1 inch, or almost exactly an inch. And that's the knob that's displayed. So we've got some basic dimensions, and then the contour, I just kind of go from there. A few specimens that I've seen up close have a tiny, tiny little bead. So it's not really a bead, it's almost like just a ring. So I just cut that in real faint to make sure that it's there. And then from here, we're gonna beat these guys up and then color them. But one of the things that I will advise on the color is that this same piece of apple that we use to produce the knobs, I sanded and polished to give it a similar finish. So we'll be able to put some coloration on here and play around a little bit. Of course, raw material is gonna soak in and look much different than what we just did. We put a little shine on it because this is supposed to have years of hand and use, so it's gonna have a nice burnished look to it, so it's highly polished, but we're gonna beat it up and add some dents too. So here we go. You've seen me do this before. I think we just did it on a previous video. Just start right out by random, put some marks in it. I'm using my burnishing tools that have different shapes. Nothing this old should look absolutely perfect, like it just came off the lathe. So we gotta add a little bit of texture to it. Different shapes leave different marks. Some flat spots and some straight spots. And then we can also just rub it and give it some different dents. Kind of push into the material a little bit. Apple's still quite hard. It's not like poplar or basswood, of course. So it's a little bit harder to leave a mark, but just putting some little marks and dents in there are going to make the difference. Everything should be random. Not trying to make any patterns. For our color supplies, we're going to use TransTint dye. I just make a little tray out of foil. I don't have a fancy painter's palette or anything like that. And I use water to cut my colors a little bit and just dilute it. So just a little splash of water, something to rinse our brush in. And we'll do a couple dots of that. And then I use TransTint. So I'm going to bring in like an orange. We'll try that. That could be too intense. We're going to try golden brown. And of course, we're going to bring in amber because we're going to try and get that shellac colored apple look. A couple little artist brushes for the project, and 1 drop of each color is all we need. 1 drop. It is so intense. This color is so fantastic. I'm gonna put my amber right up front. I'll just set my bottles in the order so I know where they are. I just want to try this orange. I used it on a product or project a while back. I really needed an orange. We're going to do that. And then a golden brown. That'll help kind of level it out a little bit. And we're going to put our golden brown over here. That'll help tone it down a little bit with some earth tones. Good. This is dye, so it would be smart to use gloves for this part of the project. Probably should follow my own advice and do that, right? Okay. So it looks like we're going to stay with the golden browns and amber. Orange is a little too much. So make sure we get full color all the way around. Sometimes I just wet the brush and just throw it down. We're trying not to be consistent, right? Because this is old. It's going to have some different shades. It's going to have some different stains. I'm going to fill a few of my little dents with some darker colors. And then dilute it a little bit. I like to have like a dark spot somewhere. There seems like there's always somebody dripping something just to break it up. Give it a dark spot there. We're going to go back to our amber. This is not new. This kind of goes against your natural instinct as a woodworker. You just finished a product and you want this project and you want this super even, perfect finish on it. And then Gordon tells you to be random and blotchy. And you haven't spent the time on it. You just don't want to do it that way. So I get it, but I'm telling you, it looks a lot more authentic. This is really what we're going for. We're going for a aged appearance. We're trying to look old. And a little too much amber makes it almost look a little too bright. So I'm leaning now more toward my browns here, trying to dilute my golden brown. I think if we put a dot of water in the golden brown, there we go. Don't want any hard lines. We want random. I've seen some vintage hand planes with furniture that just looks new, and that's usually your first clue, right? When it's all even color, it looks like it just got dipped or sprayed or something. Somebody just did a gel wipe all over the whole thing. You can tell it's either been sanded and refinished or someone made it new. I'm going to go against the grain in a couple spots too, just to give it a break up look. And this is wet, of course, so it's got kind of a little bit of a raised grain or matte feel. And then as it dries, it'll take on a little different shade. I'm going to put a lot of dark down here where the sun doesn't shine. We wouldn't be getting any UV exposure. And I want it to be kind of emulate the cast iron. Cast iron is dark, and I think this would be dark down here too. I have some staining or rust going on. So now that we've got color on, I'm going to go back and do a little bit more distressing. And of course, the part would have been colored before a lot of the wear and abuse took place. So I just like the way the light hits the part and we still have the color, but now you can start to see some of the imperfections in the surface. So it adds a sense of age. And not always does it have to be an impact. Just putting a rub on these puts a bruise on it that really stands out. It's kind of a different appearance. And then we'll shoot them with lacquer. I'm going to use a satin lacquer. Then we'll scrub and rub, and we'll put some wear marks in it. And again, even the finish that we apply, we're going to do some things to it to make it look like we didn't just put it on today. Ultimately, you always end up with a favorite. You pick one over the other. That's why I like to have choices. Never make just one.